this. And there we have the recording as well. Thank you very much. Good afternoon again to those who are listening in the recorded version. So our webinar series is about Monumental Challenges, which is a spin-off project of our EuroClio's Contested Histories initiative, which is an initiative that have been mapping contestations around history in the public space. So think of monuments, street names, etc. for a few years now. And please do check out the website contestedhistories.org. Well, I will write it in the chat here. You'll find really a lot of resources that we hope is really relevant for teaching history and teaching about contested topics in history. And based on that project, we have embarked on this journey where we have been producing lesson plans and lesson activities from that project and really preparing ready-to-use learning activities that we hope you can also adapt and tailor to your specific local context. So we have produced a number of learning activities ranging from teaching about media literacy through looking at the Charlottesville statue in the US, and it includes lessons on how to deal with multi-perspectivity in the classroom by looking at a monument here in The Hague where we are based. So you have a wide variety of examples, but we hope that they can also be tailored and adapted and used in the local context where you are based. That whole toolkit with these lesson plans will be published shortly. And just keep an eye out on contestedhistories.org and EuroClio.eu and all our social media channels, and you'll have access to it, of course, and we'll also share it to those of you who have joined this webinar series. Now I already talked too much, so I will pass on the torch to Lidija Šuica, who will talk a bit about her experience in actually implementing one of these lesson plans with her students in Belgrade, how it was for her and what the reactions were from the students. After that, Ute will take over and share similarly about doing one of the lesson plans in Cyprus. It's a Liberty Monument in Nicosia in Cyprus. Lidija will be speaking on the RTS building in Belgrade, which relates to the 1990s Yugoslav wars. After that, I do hope we will also have some time to listen to your experiences if you are teachers who have tried out similar approaches in your classroom, or rather outside of the classroom, taking your students to different monuments and teaching history through that lens. We'd be really curious to hear more about it. So without too much talk now, Lidija, floor is yours.
Thank you, Andres. And I would like to welcome all very dear friends that I see here. Some of them I haven't seen in a while, so welcome everyone. It's great to see you here, and I will present to you today one example, one lesson plan that we have exhibited here in Belgrade a month ago. With students, and of course I'll share my impressions and of course the questionnaire that I try to evaluate about this lesson plan and the activities. So we will see how the students react to these kinds of contested monuments and contested histories. I will share now the screen. Okay. Now, do you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we see it.
Oh, great. Okay. First of all, I will speak about this lesson plan. As Andrea said, this is actually lesson plan designed for exploring a very sensitive topic here in Serbia, the NATO bombing of RTS building, the radio television of Serbia in 1999. This event, as you know, is something that is sensitive topic due to the reason that 16 RTS employees lost their lives. And of course, this event raises questions about historical narratives, memorialization of this tragic event. Here we can see something that we have been doing in this project that we're calling monumental challenges. And it is really something, it is about monuments, but monumental challenges actually really is something that this project is emphasizing. The slide presents an overview of the lesson plans that we have developed in collaboration with our consortium partners as part of this educational initiative on contested cultural heritage. Our aim was to provide educators and all the teachers across Europe with resources that help all of us address sensitive and complex historical topics. These lesson plans are organized into 6 themes. And as you can see here, you can see the questions: how value change over time, media literacy and critical source analysis, conflict resolution skills, multi-perspectivity in monuments, how would you design a monument? And then the last one, contested histories in high stakes context, which is actually this lesson plan, together with the monument I'm Queen Mary statue in Copenhagen, Denmark. So here you can see it was a beautiful day. I think it was the end of October or in the beginning of November when we started doing this lesson plan. It took us 2 actually classes to do this, so not a long time, quite appropriate. And the first class was actually on-site learning activity, and I took the whole class to the site, which is like 20 meters walking from our school to this RTS building that you see here. You can find here, you can see the recommended learning objectives, the suggested age group of students, and the key question activity, which is why has building memorial for civil casualties killed in NATO bombardment of state television become such a sensitive and difficult issue. I would like to emphasize that these students are 17, these students that you see here are 17 years old, and this age proved to be particularly well suited for the task. Ultimately, the goal was to empower these students to engage with monuments and, of course, historical narratives, while also respecting the complexity and some, so to say, ethical considerations. If anyone has any questions, please do ask. I will just probably be, if you want me to be a little bit more slower, just tell me if it's a little bit too, if I'm speeding up, do suggest. So on this slide, you can see the activities that were envisioned for this lesson plan. They were divided into 3 main sections, so to say. Place-based learning activity, which you just saw on the previous slide. Then we had a classroom activity and, so to say, the concluding activity, which was like the next class, but only like for 5 minutes. It was dedicated to this questionnaire evaluation. What is what you can see here, the activities during the second class, actually, which took place at school, was actually the strategy of role play. And of course, it was very interesting to see how they were joining these groups, because I somehow let them choose which group they wanted to join. First of all, before we went to this park, which is called Tashmaidan, many of you have visited this place, so you know that it's a public space park, and a generally nice place to go. They had this kind of background information. I printed them out, these little hangouts, and gave them just something that is incorporated within every lesson plan. So these background information or case study rubric, they got this paper, and they just read about what happened actually during this event. For any of you who are not probably so much aware of what happened, I will just say that today this site is actually divided into 3 separate places, parts, so to say. There are actually 3 separate monuments. You can see here one, the second one, and the third one itself is the building. This first monument with the title Why is actually a private initiative of the families of the victims, and it's very close to the building of EACEA. This one is the second monument. It's actually a cenotaph, which means an empty tomb, dedicated to 2 people who were killed during this event. And then there is the building itself with this sign that says that this is a memorial complex. Although planned to become official memorial with built annex, the building is still, after 25 years, in unchanged condition, waiting for adaptation to proper memorial site. So after 25 years and after 12 years of the decision of the city officials that they would build a memorial complex, nothing has changed. Okay, let's go to the. I will also just like to say that when we went to this site, that unlike me, who was deeply moved by the experience, the students didn't exhibit the same emotional response. They were curious, they were taking photos, but they behaved kind of carefree, in a carefree manner. And it kind of puzzled me, I have to say. They didn't really show much, not only emotions, I could say not even respect for the place itself. Of course, I didn't really have anything to add to that, to their behavior. I just gave them instructions to take photos, to observe everything, to look around, to spot if something is interesting for them. So that's basically what they did. The division of role play of roles proved to be also very engaging. as the majority of students were eager to take on the roles of either tourists or NATO officials. That was a huge surprise for me, I have to say. The smallest group opted to represent the perspective of state officials, which is okay. That I understood. But they were very interested in sharing the perspective of NATO officials. And I have to say that although they kind of struggle with their arguments, that group was the most engaging and the most interesting, I should say. The group of state officials, however, struggled the most, as they couldn't come up with a convincing argument as to why even 25 years later, the institutions hadn't established an official memorial, especially considering that many other monuments had been erected in the meantime. So here you see group profiles and tasks. Each group was provided with a short text outlining the perspective of the individuals that they were representing, along with a set of 2 or 3 questions to guide their discussions. The students were highly motivated within their group, but selecting 1 or 2 individuals to present in front of the whole class turned out to be a bit challenging. So they're kind of shy to step forward and to represent what they were discussing. So that kind of, so to say, was a bit challenging. And of course, this at the end, the next week, I put a Google questionnaire. I created a Google questionnaire to collect their feedback and to see how they would evaluate this activity. I have to say that this is, you can see here that they were divided. I said before that I had let everyone choose which group they would be. And I have to say that it was mostly divided like this. 30% of them, as you see, were NATO officials, 30% city institutions, families, 18%, and tourists, 18%. Actually, this is the ones who were answering this questionnaire. The biggest group was actually the tourists. They really liked that one, and the NATO officials. But this is the answer to the questionnaire. What is, for me, what was revealing is that 80% of them that they said that they learned something new about this RTS building and the bombing of the RTS building and the memorialization of the victims. Most of them, they didn't know, they knew about the NATO bombing of the RTS, but they actually never went to see the site itself. So they didn't even know the narrative. They didn't even know that people were arrested after the democratic changes here in Serbia due to the fact that, for example, the director of the RTS at that time was serving his sentence for 10 years because he didn't protect the building itself and the employees. So they really didn't know a lot. They heard about it, but what has proved is that the most information comes from the family. I will not present the whole questionnaire, just some couple of slides that I find interesting. I also asked them, do you think that the role division could have included another perspective, viewpoints, which one? They said that the division was quite all right. They think it was, everyone was actually incorporated. Let's say that some suggestions were that it could have involved the ordinary people who are passing by this, or the employees of the RTS. That was like the fifth perspective they suggested, but they thought that including NATO perspective was very good, and also including tourists who come to Belgrade is something very important. Of course, I asked them to evaluate the lesson plan from, as you see, from 1 to 5, and 11 of them said that it's the high. They evaluated the class activity as 5, as the highest mark, and 4 of them gave the mark 4. They really liked this lesson plan. I have to say, first, they liked the possibility to go out of the school, of course, and we went to the park. And the second thing is, this is something nobody is talking about. For example, they said that there is no information about this event, specifically this event, RTS building, in the textbooks. They don't talk about in the history classes. So what they liked is that we have actively engaged in a topic, in a difficult and sensitive topic, through monuments. So not only were we discussing the event itself, historical narrative, but we try to pay attention more to who were the victims. Did they really get the satisfaction? What could we do more? How do we reconcile with the NATO countries, and so on and so on. So lots of questions were raised. They really liked the possibility to discuss it openly with arguments, and to do something out of the ordinary, out of the box. This was my presentation. I hope that you understood everything. And if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you very much, Lidija. I see already we do have a question already in the chat. So perhaps before we move on to Ute, you can tackle that one. Question from Marie-Louise Janssen. Lidija, thank you. So interesting. How did the group who represented the victims' families engage and react to the lesson? Do you think there was more empathy after they experienced the lesson?
Yes, of course. I told you, they didn't express any emotions at the spot. They saw the monument, why, and that explained this is the monument that was erected by the victims' families. They looked at it, oh, okay. It was quite, they were somehow ashamed to see so many people killed and so on. But of course, after in the class, that group was quite emotional, and they felt kind of, they expressed emotions. And of course, when they stepped into the shoes of the victims' families, the whole situation changed. And I have to say that group had emotional arguments rather than reasonable and rational arguments. And so, yes, they did. express emotions later.
Great, thank you. I think we can park also some questions for after Ute's has shared about her lesson. So if you have more questions, you can either keep them in mind and come with them later, and we will of course open up the floor and you can post your question in speaking or in writing in the chat. So do use the chat if you have a question, or wait until we finish up the two presentations. So Ute, the floor is yours.
So I will share my screen and then I make the official welcome. All right, so I need to move that over, I think. Let me just see. Can everybody see my screen? No.
I'm actually seeing the, yeah, there it is. Good.
There it is. Okay, so before we had a difference. Okay, now it's back the forest. Okay. Okay, so let me play the slideshow from the beginning. Okay, let's see if that works. So first of all, can you see the first slide? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
We also see the speaker notes.
We also see the speaker notes, Ute.
Okay, then I need to change that. Okay, I'm sorry about that, and I do it just as. Let me hang on. I need to get out of that. So I will go. Sorry about that.
No worries. Take your time.
I had it all set up to work perfectly. This is always how it works. Okay, so here it is again. So I think you should be able to see the big slide now, can't you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will do as also as Lidija did it. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for joining our meeting today, our webinar today. And I don't want to add much more to what Lidija said. While my teaching activity was about the so-called Liberty Monument, but the full name of the monument is actually a monument to liberty and the motherland. And here you see the monument, and yes, the sky is really that blue in Cyprus. And so this is a very big monument, which is on one of the bastions of the old Venetian town wall in Nicosia. It's a really big square, and it's basically in a straight line also to the Archbishop Palace, and that has also some significance. So I want to start first with talking to you about generally the learning activity. So this activity focuses on the concept of multi-perspectivity and bias. And initially, the activity, or one part of the activity, focuses on discussing the different elements and symbols that are presented in the Liberty Monument. And students hopefully will then also analyze the purpose of the monument and the group for which it was really made, or the target group. And we will later on see that the students really were really good in working out who was excluded, who was included. On another level, the activity is also focusing on students' reflective skills. So I wanted students to also reflect upon their own learning and upon their own biases, and what the experience of looking at the monument, analyzing the various elements of the monument, what it hopefully revealed to them. So the key question of this activity was, how does the Liberty Monument in Nicosia show a specific perspective on Cypriot history? And let's say the little bullet points below that, or the questions that we wanted to look at, was also, how do the symbols and figures in the monument reflect historical events and figures of the Cyprus independence fight? How might these representations differ from Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot perspectives? Which perspectives are actually not shown in this monument? And the main learning outcome for me was for students to understand how historical narratives are created through monuments, or which historical narratives are emphasized through monuments. Then the students, of course, by doing that, should be able to analyze the reasons why the monument is contested, and then also eventually develop ideas of how a monument or this monument could be maybe adapted or changed in order to include also other perspectives. So we had a pre-visit. So pre-visit before we went out to the monument. We had a preparation class. So altogether, this lesson or this activity went over 3 classes. And maybe I should say, before we actually start with the classes, talk a little bit more about my school and the students that we have. So I'm teaching at an international school. And alone in this class of about 18 students, we have maybe 14 different nationalities. And the Cypriots are more or less in the minority. So we have students coming from all over the world. Also students coming from countries with difficult histories and situations. So currently we have a number of Israeli students. And of course, it is very interesting to also see how they approached a contested monument. And I also did this activity in my theory of knowledge class, because this is a larger class and I could get a bigger sample. My history class is 9 students, the TOK class is 18 students. That was the one reason, but the other reason was also that in the theory of knowledge class, we really work a lot about knowledge creation and the methodology that is applied in different areas of knowledge. And in this case, that would be history. So I wanted also for the students to develop a better understanding about how historical narratives are created and what role monuments play in creating these historical narratives. So, and because I have international students, many of them, they don't really know much about the Cypriot history. They don't know much about the independence struggle that started in 1955 and ended in 1959. So it was an opportunity to also familiarize students with the history of the country they are currently residing in. And our school is also trying to actually develop or help students develop knowledge about the country they are in right now. So we wanted to also, in this first step, discuss the concept and the significance of monuments and their role in public memory and national identity. So what does it mean for Cypriot national identity? And as you can see, students need to first familiarize themselves with Cypriot history. They also got information about a Liberty Monument, and also we were looking at the symbolism of the monument and the figures it represented. And this is our warm-up activity. And if we go to the first worksheet, let's see if the link works. You can see that. I hope you can see my worksheet as well. So you can see here the warming up activity was divided into 3 smaller steps, where we had a general discussion on monument images or monuments in general. And we had a variety of monuments that students analyzed. Then we used later on sticky notes, where students were asked to write down ideas of as many symbols they can think of that monuments can include. And then we were looking at a few symbols and we discussed their potential meanings in different cultural or historical contexts, because of course, symbols can mean different things in different cultural contexts or societies. So, and the first thing is, we're discussing here, what could we memorize or commemorate in monuments? Let me remove that. And you can see we had issues like freedom, nationalism, liberty, peace, unity, democracy, and so on. And what we discussed with our students, that most of these are, of course, very abstract concepts. So a monument has then also the task to symbolize in some way very abstract concepts that can mean different things for different people. And we had then also the little, the post-its. I show you in a moment another slide where we can read them actually. And we were looking at ideas or symbols that could represent such concepts such as freedom, independence, unity, or struggle. And this is what the students came up with. So we have, for example, pigeons. A number of them had doves representing peace, and here peace and love, or freedom. Yeah, or here we have stars. Again, we have a dove and the peace sign, or the fist for the fight. Yeah. Then somebody showed for, or one group said for struggle, it could be chains, people again. So we have a lot of pigeons here, yeah, representing freedom or peace. And then we have here for struggle, a person being crushed by a rock. So we have some very interesting ideas here of what people actually, or the students thought would represent some of these very abstract concepts. Then I had the next task was for students to think about the name of the monument, because the monument was called, or is called, the Monument to Freedom and the Motherland. And we created a Padlet, and let me see if I can connect here as well, where we had, because we took, students could take this with them later on also when we went to the monument itself. And we have here some very interesting ideas and the reasons why the monument might have been given that name. So I will go back to the presentation. I just give you one example here. The full name of the monument is Monument to Liberty and the Motherland. It is called this because it symbolizes the goal of the Union of Cyprus and Greece, which is the motherland. It commemorates the members of the EOCA and the victims of the independence struggle. That is, the people that were imprisoned, tortured, and hung by the colonial authorities. This represents independence because the goal was to become independent from British rule and unite with Greece. Then maybe here, that one is interesting. It tells the story of the Greek Cypriots, or the Greek Cypriot liberation movement, and the Turkish Cypriots feel their presence on the island is unrecognized. So you can see already, actually, there were some very good insights from the onset, before we even went to the monument. Now, the next one was the on-site activities. And again, what we did there, it was divided into 4 steps. We had the introduction to the monument, its history, architecture, and the event it commemorates. Then the next one, students really walk around and explore the monument, its surroundings. And as you could see before, it's really a big, big area. We have then also group discussions and eventually historical analysis and the presentation of their ideas or their conclusions. So, so the first activity was the observation reflection time. So students could spend around 15 minutes to go around. They can also climb up, that's allowed. And I wanted them to take notes on these ideas, on these key points here. So what can they observe about the size, the design, the inscriptions, the sculptures or figures, location, the material that was used, and the symbols, because we were talking initially also about the symbols. So they had time to actually go around and observe the monument, and there are some more photographs of the students. So what I have done, I have given them clipboards, because later on I wanted them also to draw some infographic. And you can see here we had students observing, writing down, so they had the worksheets and they could walk around. Now, the next step was, part of this activity was looking at the different elements, the statues, the inscriptions, and most importantly, whom or what do they represent, or whom or what do they not represent? And of course, the last question also, whose perspective does the Liberty Monument reflect? And how do you know that? So that was the table they had on the worksheet, and that's one example of what the students came up with, one group of students. So, for example, we have soldiers who would probably represent the EuroClio monument, or movement soldiers, sorry. We have then inscripted names. These were the names of the fallen during the EuroClio movement. Then we have the large woman at the top, who represents liberty and freedom. We have the prisoners coming out into the light from that cell. And we have this gate which is opening, that represents freedom after the liberation of Cyprus from colonial rule. Then, yeah, we had the infographic, so that was activity 4. So again, in their groups or teams, they were asked to create an infographic about the Liberty Monument and its significance. And I asked them also to include as many perspectives as possible. And we have here on the right, the more detailed instructions. So what they came up with is things like that. So these are 3 groups of 5 groups about. So you can see this one here says that the Turkish Cypriots may not feel represented, or they are unrepresented by this monument. Then we have someone else, the other group would show actually the Cypriot perspective, which would be freedom. Then the Turkish perspective, yeah, this is just not represented. Maybe the Greek perspective. And what I found really interesting is this one here, the British perspective, yeah, that a piece of the British Empire from the puzzle of the British Empire was taken out as a result of the independence. And then here we have again other symbols like shaking hands, yeah. And then the Greek flag. So we have a number of ideas of what could be included and what could not be included, or what was missing. So that was what happened during the visit on the monument. And you can see here, we were introducing, or the students were then explaining the different designs they had developed. So I move on. So the last of the 3 activities, and for me that was also very important, was the culminating class or group discussion, and then the reflective essay. And it was very interesting because the discussion was, of course, designed in such a way to recap what they had seen, what they had learned on site, but also, of course, information they had studied earlier. And again, the major point here was how can different perspectives or more perspectives be represented? Can you think of any design or any other ideas? And it was quite interesting that some students actually said, well, we don't really want to take things away, but maybe we can add something. We can add some additional explanation. So they found it, of course, hard to come up with ideas of how to redesign a monument, but just this, the discussion around the different elements and who was represented, who wasn't. So we have here, I gave them some whiteboards. And so these are some ideas that they came up with during that discussion. What I like here is we have this idea that so many different groups were not at all represented, like the Armenians, for example, or other, where do we have that? It's somewhere here. We have the Armenians, the Maronites. Most of these groups have not been represented in this monument, okay? Then we do not change, but we add more context. So we have students thinking about, again, how they could maybe modify the monument to make it more inclusive. And finally then, based on all the discussion and all the activities that we had done previously, I wanted students to write a reflective essay. And they were given a few prompts they could use in order to think about this essay. for example, why and for whom was the monument created, who commissioned it, how does the monument help you deepen your understanding of Cypriot history, and how different groups or communities would see it. And I have to say, I was very, very impressed with some of the essays, or with some of the comments within the essays that students created. Here, this was very, very good. So it says here, for example, ultimately my engagement with the Liberty Monument enforced my understanding of the Greek Cypriot perspective of the conflict and the reality of perspectives being excluded or neglected in history, in this case, exhibited through a monument. Then this one here says, I just need to turn my screen a little bit. The monument represents the different perspectives of the many different people and their cultures and beliefs in Cyprus. The monument represented the Cypriot perspective as well as the Greek. However, it failed to mention multiple nations, such as the Armenians, the Turkish Cypriots, the British, and the Maronite Christians, were all part of the population in Cyprus during that time period. The monument only shows the Greek and Cypriot perspectives, since the monument was created to commemorate the Greek Cypriots who fought for the independence of Cyprus, specifically the EuroClio members. And then I have one last. So that was the more personal connection one student made, who wrote, I understand both the Turkish Cypriot perspective and the Greek Cypriot perspective. I am from the Basque country in Spain, and Spain and the Basque country have a complicated history, riddled in division and conflicts. Many people in the Basque country feel separate from the rest of Spain and do not feel represented by Spain. While there are no notable monuments like in Cyprus, the division of Basque people from the rest of Spain impacts the relationship many Basque people have with the rest of Spain. For the Liberty Monument, I'm not sure what the best course of action would be. I believe that it would be beneficial to add more context to the monument and mention other nationalities in Cyprus. And maybe the final one here is it is a monument that represents EuroClio, the EuroClio lives, and it is a controversial one as it includes many stories and perspectives to paint a specific picture of history. So this idea how historical narratives are created also through monuments, that was very clear here. And this one here, it's a representation of values of a specific society, and even what perspectives the society chooses to exclude. So I found this extremely insightful comments. So, and this is how the activity ended. This was our culminating activity. I felt that the large majority of my students were actually very engaged. And especially since we are an international school, also with students coming from countries that have their own let's say, issues, I think a number of them could really relate to the activity quite well. And they could also make connections to their own story, to their own history, or to the history of the country they are coming from. And yes, for me as a teacher living and working in Cyprus for so many years, it was also nice to see how students actually got a better understanding of the very complicated and contested history of Cyprus. So if you have any questions and feedback, I'm happy to answer them. And I think I stop the sharing now.
Thank you very much, Uta. This was wonderful to see how you did this with your students in Nicosia. Before we do post your questions in the chat, or raise your hand, or signal us in some way if you want to speak out. While we're waiting for that, and I hope people will have questions, I have one actually. So I was wondering, if you mentioned, you have a very international classroom, but among the Cypriots you have in your classroom, were there also somebody from the minority groups that are not mentioned on the monument present?
Not in this particular class, but I do have students who in other classes who come from the minority groups, from the Armenian group. But this class, I have 2 Cypriots out of the 18.
Okay.
So the rest is all very international. Yes.
And how did they react actually? The 2 Cypriots you?
The 2 Cypriots. Okay, so I have to say these two Cypriots, they are both of them. They come from families who come from the diplomatic corps. So these are kids who have quite a good understanding of a lot of these issues. But even the Cypriots, they said, "Oh, there are things I didn't really know, I was not aware of. Or I saw that monument and I never thought about what I said before, this axis between the monument and the bishop's palace, because that really also symbolizes the power of the bishop, the archbishop at the time, and the power of the church at the time, and still has. So there's this clear view from both sides. Yes, and of course the interesting thing is that this monument was not uncovered until late in the 70s, because in 1974 we had the Turkish invasion and there were lots of fights going on. So this monument was just covered because it was about to be unveiled in 1974. And yeah, it was also from that point of view, they saw a lot of bullet holes and they said, what was going on here? Yes. So there were these nationalists who wanted unity with Greece, and then there were other fighters. So it helped them to understand also a very complicated part of Cypriot history. And many of them, and yeah, many of them were not aware of that before we did this activity.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions at all to either Lidija or to
I have a question for Lidija, if
Please
possible.
go ahead, Aisha. Yes, go ahead.
Lidija, hi. This is very interesting. Your lesson plan is very interesting, and I plan to use it in my 12th grades this year, hopefully. I just have a question about the building itself. How do the students felt about the building itself? Do they think it should be restored, or should it stay as a monument itself? Mm-hmm. And how is their relation with the sites with NATO or Western power or European Union through this lesson plan? Does this questions came up?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Aisha. So nice to see you. Thank you for your kind words. What I have to say is that most of them actually said that the space doesn't appear to be a memorial site. The building itself is reconstructed also, so to say, not reconstructed. It was conserved in the same place as it stayed. It is just, it has gone through some process of stabilization of the building itself. It is a ruined building, destroyed, but it will remain the same. They feel that it should remain in the state it is now. That part is clear to them, and they agree that it should stay in that position. What I think that they all believe that it should become a memorial space after this class, and after they have explored everything and arguments and the reasons for the NATO bombing, which is, I have to say, the first time they heard and they thought about why actually Serbia was bombarded. They didn't know about the negotiation of Rambouillet. They didn't know about, of course, they knew about the Kosovo War, but there were lots of things they didn't really hear. Finding arguments on the NATO side actually proved to be very revealing for them. They didn't know what was happening. Why would somebody bomb Serbia at that time? I mean, from their perspective, it's something, you know, it didn't make sense. And then they heard about the victims in Bosnia, in Croatia, the war of the 90s, and things like that. So everything, of course, their perspective changed. The views kind of got more deconstructed. And I think, of course, they feel that this place some of you were there, it doesn't look like a memorial place. And they think that it should be a memorial place, and that, of course, the state should take care of this place and recognize it as a memorial place. And of course, what they see now, and they recognize that Serbia, actually, the educational system in Serbia doesn't really involve so much this war of 90s and everything that happened during the 90s. So thank you for this question.
Also, your students are in high school or in university?
No, they were 17-year-old. It's here in Serbia. It's the 3rd year of gymnasium, high school, actually.
I really like to thank you because it gives us idea how to do a workshop in Turkey. We have a building like that. It was burned down during the 1990s during a fight with the radicals and seculars. It is in Sivas. So it gave me a really good idea. You know, we were always searching monument itself, but the building or the issue, the building around the building also could be a subject for our local workshops. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you both. There's another question from Marie-Louise Janssen. Ute, great lesson. How much time did it take you to prepare for the lesson? And will you do it again in the future? And third question, any chance that other teachers in Cyprus would be interested as well?
I think so, yes. So let me open the chat because otherwise I forget the questions. To prepare the lesson, well, it didn't take that much time because we had the lesson plans, of course, ready, but producing the lesson plans for the project, of course, that took some time. But now that I have it ready, I can take classes again. And especially, I really like to take my theory of knowledge class because we are talking a lot about knowledge creation. And I think for that class, it's a really, really good lesson. So I will do this again, definitely. And I think other teachers in Cyprus, they might be interested in doing that. But of course, it depends also. With this class, I have quite a lot of freedom of how and what I teach. So this is unlike other classes where teachers, especially in the state schools, have very prescribed lesson schemes of work, let's say. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I think my colleagues at school, they would definitely be interested. Yes.
May I ask you a question as well? I just don't know the situation. That's why I'm asking this. Are there students or schools from northern part of Cyprus can come and visit this site and
They
have
can.
the lesson? They can. Okay.
They can. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions to our two facilitators or to Paula and myself about the project that we are doing? That's also fine. If not, I'll just do a last sort of scan around the room and see if anyone is, eagerly trying to get my attention. I don't see that. So then I think we can say thank you very much to Ute and Lidija in Nicosia and Belgrade. And thanks for everyone for joining, and hope to see you again in future webinars or online activities.
Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy
Yeah.
holidays. So happy to see you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.